Ladies and gentlemen, you wonderful Yankees fans, you misguided Red Sox fans, and the occasional Mets fan that got lost and ended up on this video. Welcome to the inaugural Bleacher Brawls podcast. Today is a great day to be discussing baseball as we proceed with the 2021-2022 offseason. Today began day one of the official work stoppage, so now seems like a great time to stop, reflect, and look at what the Yankees have done so far this offseason, which is nothing, what the Red Sox have done, which isn't much. I would like to proceed and start and talk about, well, I guess let's start with the Yankees. The Yankees have done pretty much nothing so far. We've offered a few tendered contracts, and we're bringing back a few players, but as Yankees fans, we're expecting a huge splash going into this year's offseason. It hasn't happened yet. The best place for that to start would be most Yankees fans. Number one on most Yankees fans' wish list was Corey Seeger. Now, Corey Seeger seems like he'd fit in with the Yankees perfectly. Left-handed bat, playoff experience, can play shortstop, and we all know the Yankees need a shortstop. However, that didn't happen. The reason that didn't happen is because the Yankees were really outbid for the contract. I have thoughts on that, and I'd really like to get into that. What I'm seeing on social media through fans calling into sports talk radio and even articles like the MSN, they've considered the Yankees cheap for not going out on a big splurge. Corey Seager, ideally being the real person we want to talk about here. Corey Seager was offered a 10-year deal. Now, as much as I think Corey Seager would have been a great fit in the Yankees, that really is only on a 4 or 5 year basis. I don't think Corey Seager to the Yankees on a 10-year contract is what the Yankees need. It's going to hamper them. And I'd like to just kind of bring this up to all these Yankees fans that are mad right now. I'd like to go back and think about A-Rod. You know, A-Rod was great the first couple of years of his contract, arguably great the first couple of years of his contract, and it really hampered the Yankees as he aged, as he got older. Huge average annual value on that contract. And as these players get older, they don't perform the way they do. So when you're signing Corey Seager today, you're not thinking 10 years down the road. And that would hamper the Yankees 10 years down the road. To put it into perspective, I really like to compare Corey Seager to Robinson Cano. Yankee fans, we were devastated when Robbie Cano left for Seattle. I couldn't believe the Yankees got outbid. That never happened in my lifetime. Now, hindsight being 2020, it's actually a great thing that Robinson Cano didn't come back to the Yankees, and they did not match that Seattle deal of 10 years. That 10-year contract has not really worked out well for anybody. Any team that signed a player to 10 years, a lot of times those last couple of years are a real albatross, and it hampers the team. I don't think the Yankees need that. Corey Seager is not the guy that's going to be playing shortstop 10 years from now. I am concerned about his size. I'm concerned about the way he plays. I don't think Corey Seager fits into the Yankees on a 10-year plan. He would have fit in the Yankees perfectly on a 4 or 5 year plan. A 10-year deal is going to hamper the Yankees long term. The Yankees have some great shortstop prospects that are coming up through the system. At least I've been told they're great. I hear they're great. I haven't seen them with my own eyes, but we've heard a lot about Anthony Volpe and Oswaldo Peraza. Both these guys could be playing for the Yankees in the next 2 years. That means we don't really need Corey Seager on a 10-year deal. I would have loved to have seen Corey Seager, but I don't think the Yankees are cheap for not signing Corey Seager. I think they were scared off by the length of the contract as opposed to the price of the contract. We've seen it work to the Yankees' disadvantage with A-Rod. We've seen it work to their advantage by not re-signing Robbie Cano to that long-term deal. And I think this is really going to be something with the Yankees going forward that we're going to see time and again. If other teams are willing to really overextend for a player on a long-term contract, I think the Yankees are going to be gun-shy in that. I think on a shorter deal, maybe the Yankees would spend a little bit more, but if you're going to be locking somebody in to 7, 8, 9, 10-year deal, it just doesn't make sense for the Yankees. I don't think we're going to see that again, or at least anytime soon. I know we signed Garrett Cole to a long-term deal. Maybe Aaron Judge gets re-signed or locked in, extended for a long-term deal to keep him a Yankee, but I don't think the Yankees are going to necessarily be going out and signing free agents to long-term deals on a regular basis. So as much as I would have loved to see Corey Seager for the next couple of years, it's not happening, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because of the length of the contract. I would not want the Yankees to match that contract, so it doesn't work out, unfortunately, in this time. So that's Corey Seeger. And in the words of Jordan, on to the next one. As we continue to focus on what the Yankees haven't done so far in the offseason, we have to address pitching. Now, there's one person I really wanted to see the Yankees sign. That was Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray has had two very solid last full seasons. So 2019, 2021, Robbie Ray has really stepped it up and improved himself as a pitcher. I know Brian Cashman, or at least we've heard that Brian Cashman has been a longtime fan of Robbie Ray. I thought if the Yankees were going to overextend for anybody or overpay for anybody, this is the guy they should have gone after. The Yankees have struggled with starting pitching over the past 20 years. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. And I do think if the Yankees are going to go out and step up, give somebody the years that they might not be comfortable giving them, give them the money they're not going to be comfortable giving them, Robbie Ray might have been the guy to do that for. The guy's turned into a bit of a strikeout machine. He puts up a lot of innings. And I really thought if the Yankees were going to go after anybody, it should have been Robbie Ray. You can never have enough starting pitching. The Yankees have shown that for a long time now. The Yankees should have signed Robbie Ray, or at least put up more of an effort to sign Robbie Ray. It bothers me that they didn't, and I think Brian Cashman and the Yankees might have made a mistake by letting Robbie Ray slip through their fingers. Another starting pitcher name was brought up that I'm not necessarily 100% sold on was Kevin Goffsman. Now, Kevin Goffsman spent the last year, pitched really well in San Francisco, really was an integral part to the great season they had. I don't necessarily know that Kevin Goffsman fits in the Yankees. Now, I looked at his splits, and historically, he actually has pitched pretty well in Yankee Stadium, all things being considered. However, his breakout year came in the National League West. National League West is filled with big pitchers' ballparks, and they don't have to face the DH. Yankee Stadium is more of a hitter's park, as we all know. I don't necessarily know if Kevin Goffsman would fit into Yankee Stadium the way a lot of people think he might have fit into Yankee Stadium. The other thing that's kind of holding me back on Kevin Goffsman, it might not be fair, but Kevin Goffsman did pitch for the Baltimore Orioles, and let's face it, all due respect, they're the Baltimore Orioles. They're not really bringing much to the table these past couple of years. So just because the guy came up through Baltimore, it's going to make me maybe a little bit hesitant that he's not going to be able to pitch in New York. Sorry, Baltimore. That's just the way it is. Would have loved to see Robbie Ray. Kevin Goffsman, not so much. Another player I would have loved to have seen on the Yankees was Chris Taylor. Now, Chris Taylor might not be a big name, and maybe a lot of Yankees fans aren't really even familiar with him because we do tend to be very New York focused. Chris Taylor is a super utility player that spent the last few years in Los Angeles for the Dodgers. And the Dodgers just re-signed him last night, heading up to that work stoppage deadline, so it doesn't look like he's going anywhere. 4-year deal worth about $60 million, I believe. I do think that was a fair deal, and I think if the Yankees could have potentially matched that. What I like about Chris Taylor is his ability to play, again, super utility player. He actually has played quite a few games at shortstop in his career, so he could have slid into that shortstop position, at least as a stopgap. I do also like the fact that Chris Taylor has postseason experience. He's won a World Series, granted, it was in the COVID-shortened year, but he's also played in a lot of other postseason games for the Dodgers. He's been to the World Series. That's something the Yankees have been lacking these past couple of years, as they've gone out to Texas to bring in Joey Gallo. They go out to Colorado to bring in players. You bring in guys that have never played in a big, important game before. So when they do get there, I mean, maybe the moment's too big. Maybe it's just your first time in that position in playing in a playoff game, and you're just not ready for it. So I do think the Yankees need to bring in guys with playoff experience. Chris Taylor would have been an ideal candidate for the Yankees to bring in. I think they made a mistake maybe by not really looking into that more. I had never heard his name attached to the Yankees. I would have loved to see Chris Taylor in a Yankees uniform. So now, as far as we've gone with the Yankees, I'm glad that they didn't give Corey Seeger the 10-year deal. I do think they made a mistake, though, in passing on Robbie Ray and Chris Taylor. These are both very good guys that could have come in and really made a difference for the Yankees, at least in my opinion. So we've addressed who the Yankees did not sign as free agents, who are not going to be playing in New York next year. It's time to address who the Yankees are bringing back. The Yankees are bringing back Gary Sanchez. Is anybody happy about that? I'm not happy about that. I can't imagine there's a Yankees fan out there that believes pinstripe blood that's happy that the Yankees are bringing back Gary Sanchez. This guy, Gary Sanchez, was a fantastic hitter in 2017. That was 4 seasons ago. He has not lived up to the hype since then. His batting average is usually around the Mendoza line, sometimes above, sometimes below. This past season, he did hit 23 home runs, and that's good, but did any Yankees fans really notice? I mean, you could have told me he had 7 home runs this past season. It wouldn't have mattered because the guy who's been terrible, strikes out all the time, and he's even worse defensively behind the plate. I mean, I have a very good friend that refers to Gary Sanchez as E2 because, I mean, is there a better nickname? The guy is horrible. I would just rather see the Yankees bring in a defensive catcher that can't hit, right? Like, I mean, Gary Sanchez already can't hit, so what are you losing there? Just bring in a guy that can play defense. It's something that Gary Sanchez can't do. I mean, Austin Romine, for example, is a free agent this season. I mean, I would have no problem bringing in Austin Romine as your everyday catcher. We know he can handle a pitching staff. He's good defensively, and he's a stopgap until the Yankees can actually bring in an everyday catcher. It drives me absolutely crazy that Gary Sanchez is coming back to the Yankees. I mean, this guy could get run over by a steamroller tomorrow. I don't think there's a Yankees fan out there that's going to care. Just enough with this Gary Sanchez thing. Hey, Brian Cashman, if you're listening, get rid of the guy. My only thought, the only way this makes sense at all is with this new labor agreement coming up, the new CBA. National League has a DH full-time. National League, you're going to stop seeing pitchers hit, and they're going to start using a designated hitter. If that's the case, then maybe Gary Sanchez has some value to get traded out to this National League team to be their everyday designated hitter because nobody wants him as a catcher. And Brian Cashman and his baseball nerds should have figured that out by now. His only redeeming quality as a catcher is we keep hearing about how great he is at pitch framing. Oh, he's a good pitch framer. I think that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, and it's complete nonsense. To my understanding, when umpires are calling balls and strikes, they're not looking at where the catcher catches the ball. They're looking at the strike zone and if the ball crosses within that area of the strike zone. So, yeah, maybe on TV it looks great that Gary Sanchez can frame a pitch, but in reality, like, I don't think it matters in in-game action. And if that's all you have on this guy, like, he can frame pitches. Well, I'd rather see a catcher that can stop balls in the dirt. I'd rather see a catcher that doesn't have 20 pass balls in a season. I want a guy that can go out there, handle a pitching staff, bring an A game defensively, stop balls in the dirt, prevent wild pitches, prevent pass balls. Yeah, maybe occasionally throw out a runner. Gary Sanchez does have a good arm. But the important thing is bring in a defensive catcher. When you're comparing apples to apples, you bring in a defensive catcher that can't hit, or you can have Gary Sanchez who can't hit and can't play defense. This was an absolute disaster, and it's time to move on from Gary Sanchez. I don't know why this hasn't happened yet. I don't know why he's coming back. He should have been non-tendered. They should not be bringing Gary Sanchez back, and they should be looking at other options to be their everyday catcher. I can rant for days about how much I can't stand Gary Sanchez, but I'm going to stop right here because maybe you don't want to hear it, or maybe I can go on forever. Point being, I'm sick of Gary Sanchez, and I really, really hope the Yankees can find a way to get rid of this guy. While we are on the topic of the Yankee prospects that maybe didn't live up to the hype, I am sad to see, and I know I maybe not in the majority on this one, I am actually sad to see Clint Frazier go. Clint Frazier came up with a lot of hype. His bat speed was legendary, from the words of Brian Cashman. His bat speed is legendary. And what I really always liked about Clint Frazier was his swag. I mean, this is a guy, I've been watching Yankees baseball my whole life. I've seen a lot of playoff games. I've seen a lot of clutch hits. Clint Frazier has that swag where he's going to be a playoff hero one day. I really hope to be in New York. It looks like it's going to probably be somewhere else. But there's going to be a day where Clint Frazier steps up to the bat in a clutch spot in the playoffs, and the moment's not going to be too big for him. And he's going to go in there with that his swag, his can-do attitude, and he's going to get that clutch hit that's going to propel a team on to victory. I really wish Clint Frazier all the best. Would have loved to see him stay as a Yankee. Didn't happen, unfortunately. All I can say is, Clint Frazier, I hope you get better. I hope you get healthy. And I really, really hope you have a strong career and maybe one day find your way back to the Yankees because you are going to be a postseason hero one day. So once this labor stoppage is over, players' union and the owners can come to some sort of agreement on the new collective bargaining agreement. There's going to be a frenzy of moves made in order to get teams ready to go into spring training. Hopefully this whole work stoppage ends before spring training, so I might be getting ahead of myself here. But there's going to be a lot of moves made in a very short amount of time. The Yankees are going to have a lot of work to do. So I want to take a look at some players out there that might be a good fit for the Yankees or someone they should at least be considering. So first off, that'd be Anthony Rizzo. He's a left-handed bat that the Yankees need. He seemed to be a great clubhouse guy, and he's an excellent fielder. As much as I like Luke Voit unfortunately hasn't stayed healthy. The Yankees might really want to consider bringing back Anthony Rizzo on maybe a 3 or 4 year deal. I know there's been rumblings out there of the Yankees looking at Matt Olson from the Oakland A's. Maybe they're interested in Freddie Freeman, who I'd be cool with. But I do think Anthony Rizzo could potentially be a Yankee once this work stoppage is over and a new collective bargaining agreement is settled. I do think the Yankees might actually be bringing back Anthony Rizzo. Another guy out there is because, as we all know, the Yankees need a shortstop. Well, really, there's only 2 free agent shortstops left out there, one of whom being Trevor Story. I would not be a fan of the Yankees signing Trevor Story to a long-term deal. Maybe as a 2-3 year stopgap until their shortstop prospects are ready. Maybe that's okay. I'm not a huge Trevor Story fan, and it's nothing against him as a person or him as a player. It's just the fact that he hasn't played in those playoff and postseason games. He doesn't have the experience that the Yankees really need when they're bringing in more players. The Yankees have enough guys on that team who've never won a World Series. The Yankees have enough guys on that team who've never really made it deep into the playoffs. I don't think that adding another player like that is really going to help the team in the way they need it. So if they bring in Trevor Story on a short-term deal, okay, maybe it works out. Maybe it is going to turn out to be a postseason hero. But I don't really think that's the mentality they need to be looking at right now. I think they need to be looking at a way to bring in a guy with postseason experience. I mean, looking back to the mid-'90s, things really started to change with the Yankees when they brought in a guy like Mike Gallego. Mike Gallego wasn't a big flashy name, but he had a ton of playoff experience. He knew how to win, and he helped change the culture in that club. And I think that's what the Yankees should be looking for in a stopgap situation as they bring in a shortstop for the next season or two. Another guy out there with postseason experience that I'm actually pretty intrigued by would be Kyle Schwerber. Now, I don't necessarily know if Kyle Schwerber fits into the team. I don't know if there's really a place for him. It takes some maneuvering to make that happen, but he's a big left-handed bat. Again, won a World Series, playoff experience, and you'd be keeping him away from Boston, which is really important because he did seem to fit in pretty well in Boston. I think the Yankees, if there's a way to get Kyle Schwerber on this team, I think the Yankees need to pull the trigger on that one. They really need to bring in guys with postseason experience, and bringing in Kyle Schwerber would not only help them, but it would take away from the Red Sox. So if Cashman can maneuver a way to bring in Kyle Schwerber, I mean, that's a move I'd all be for. And then lastly, as we all know, there's another free agent shortstop out there. Now, that free agent shortstop is never going to play for the Yankees. I want nothing to do with Carlos Correa. I mean, I don't care what his skill set is. The guy's been hurt, all right? The guy played a full season when he was like 24, hasn't played a full season again until a contract year. All right, I already have questions about the guy's character to begin with, but that's another reason why I should be questioning his character. Additionally, I've heard on sports radio saying, oh, well, the Yankee fans would eventually warm up to him. No, we would not warm up to him. I never, ever would want to see Carlos Correa in the Yankees uniform. And if he did come into the Yankees, his first at-bat till his last at-bat at Yankee Stadium, that guy's going to get booed out of the stadium. I mean, you're going to take a guy like A-Rod. A-Rod's going to look at the way Carlos Correa is treated every time he comes to bat at the Yankee Stadium and be like, I got off easy, man. It could have been way worse. Another reason to bring in the only reason it makes sense to bring in Carlos Correa would be to bring in Carlos Correa to take the heat off of Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, I think it's really unfair the way Stanton gets booed in Yankee Stadium. That's a conversation for another day. But that's the only good Carlos Correa is going to bring to the Yankees is every time he comes to bat, people are going to forget how much they can't stand Giancarlo Stanton, and they're going to just unleash hatred towards Carlos Correa. Because let's face it, I hate the guy. I really hope the Yankees know better than to bring in Carlos Correa to the Yankees, because that's just not going to work. Again, questions about his character, questions about his durability, and just I hate the guy. He's a freaking cheater. get lost. Don't come to New York. We don't want you. And with all these other shortstops getting signed, I really hope that big money deal isn't out there for him and he does not get the money he wants because he doesn't deserve it. So Cashman, if you're listening, don't bring in Carlos Correa. We don't want him. It's not going to do any good. And I guarantee you, I vow the Yankees fans will make this guy's life miserable for the length of that contract. No Carlos Correa. All right, lastly, I do want to touch on the Red Sox a little bit. They've made a few moves in the offseason so far. I don't think anything that really blows me away. I know they signed James Paxton to a one-year deal. Unfortunately, things do seem to break in the Red Sox favor these past couple of years. I thought Nathan Eovaldi would blow up in their face, and he kind of didn't. So I'd like to think that James Paxton was just going to continue on with his injury-prone career and be a bust for the Red Sox. Don't know if that's going to happen, unfortunately, because they've had the luck these past couple seasons, and we haven't. The Red Sox did make a last-minute move to trade Hunter Renfro to the Brewers and brought back Jackie Bradley and prospects. Now, to me, I think this is a great deal from a Yankees fan perspective. Bradley isn't really much of a hitter. He did not perform well out in Milwaukee. He is a superb defender, so I have to give him that. But I would rather see Bradley starting for the Red Sox than Hunter Renfro. Hunter Renfro has always been a pretty decent player. He's a very good fielder, got a good arm. And to me, he always seemed like a clutch player. Maybe he's not, but he certainly always felt like he came up clutch against the Yankees. So seeing him leave Boston, to me, that's a good thing. I really hope the Red Sox are making a mistake here. And, that's the best case scenario. The best case scenario for the Yankees is that Bradley flames out, that these prospects never make it to the majors. Hunter Renfro goes on, has a pretty decent career or pretty decent season in Milwaukee. And then let's all hope, no one's hoping for injury, but James Paxton, if his career keeps going the way it has, maybe only pitches a few innings for the Red Sox before that's over with. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the first ever Bleacher Brawls podcast. I hope it went well. I hope you appreciate it. Hope you liked what I had to say. Maybe I brought some new insight. If you did appreciate this podcast, please, by all means, go to our website, bleacherbrawls.com. We have some great articles on there. We do look forward to putting more up, too, and you get a good insight from a Yankees fan and a Red Sox fan. Additionally, now, if you saw this video and it wasn't sent to you by either myself or Luke, please leave a comment. Let me know how you came about it. Maybe like the video or even subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And we'd love to get to know the Yankees fans, Red Sox fans more. We'd love to have some interaction with you guys. And again, please like the page, like the video. Let us know where you're from and how you came across the video. So again, bleacherbrawls.com. And we hope to be talking to you guys again soon.